Hey guys, we have yet another case review for you, and today we're reviewing an ASUS ProArt PA401. It's a mid-size case and it yet again features some wooden accents. Let's open up and have a look what we got. In the box we have a little accessory box which basically just has some screws and some bracketry. Nothing too crazy in here. And we also have a little user guide. In terms of brackets, this is actually a bracket for the graphics card, or for actually PCIe expansions, to have your graphics card in a vertical orientation rather than horizontal. Then we have some loose screws, some more loose screws, and some more loose screws. It's almost like I have some. So these screws are for the vertical mount for the graphics card or any PCIe card, as well as some hard drives. There's some standoffs and some other screws which could be for the hard drives as well as everything else. As to the case itself, it's a mid-tower, but it's actually on a slightly smaller size, which is not necessarily a good thing, but we'll get to that in a bit. Let's have a look around. So you've got the wooden accents on the front, and they went with a very dark wood, so you almost can't tell. It looks kind of plasticky, but no, this is actually real wood. Then we have a bunch of panels that we can open up. So let's start with the top. So top is a mesh panel without any special filter, just the mesh panel itself. I'm going to just remove all the panels to show you around. So for the front, just rip it out. We also have, so these are the wooden accents, and inside we have another filter, which is basically just a loose mesh. For the side panel, they actually have a little lock at the back. I'll show you that in a minute. But basically you press it and you can remove the glass side panel. Something to note about this case, it comes in 3 different variants. You can have it with a tempered glass panel like this, or you can have it in solid steel panel, which is a nice little choice. And then lastly, we have the panel on the back. You can have a little button and remove that too. For the button at the back, you have a little lock switch here, which prevents you to push the little button here. You move it across, you push the button, and the side panel comes out. And you can lock it down in case you're traveling or you're moving the case around, so it doesn't just randomly pop open, which is a nice little touch. With the case nicely opened, we can see that we have 2 intake fans at the front. These are 2 160mm, 32mm deep fans. And we have a single 120mm fan at the back for exhaust. They went with really thick fans, which I actually like this new trend. Big fans at the front pushing a lot of air at low RPM is a good choice for keeping your case cool while keeping the noise levels down. There's only spots at the top to install additional fans or radiators. And this is where it becomes a bit of a funny one for me. This case can support up to 2 additional fans, which would be 140mm each at the top, or you can go up to 240mm radiators at the top. So you can go 120 or 240, which is very limiting for what this case is supposed to be about. This is supposed to be for creators. And one of the things that happens with creators, they have high-end CPUs, which need a lot of cooling. But hey, look, it's a very compact case, and as you can see, it fits really nicely on the table. So I think that's what was the priority here, is to make it look good so you can place it on the table. Therefore, you want to make it slightly smaller. Right. Inside the case itself, we can install most standard motherboards. So you can go all the way up to full-size ATX. Nothing crazy like eATX or SSIB, but a full-size ATX motherboard will fit just fine. You have limited amount of cutouts, but you have enough cutouts for your cables. So you have the big cutouts on the side here for your USB or power cables for the motherboard. You also have a bit of a cutout over here for your graphics card power supply cable, which is a very nice touch. And you have a nice access at the back in case you want to change your cooler for your motherboard. For example, if you go with the air cooler, you have ability to do that from the back. And you have a few more cutouts at the top. It's limited. As you can see here, this case does not support back to front motherboards. This is more for standard motherboards to do your normal setup. If you look closely here, for the bottom fan, it actually has a bit of a slope to flick the air up And hopefully, I'm expecting this to help with the graphics cards. So you'll kind of flow the air slightly upwards when you install the graphics cards down below. It's pretty simple here. So you have your front I/O cables. We'll get to that in a bit. You have a fan controller here. It can support up to 5 fans, which is perfect because you can only really install 5 fans here. You have 3 pre-installed, and you really have 2 more fans you could do at the top. So you can install all of them without needing to install any additional expanders, which is a nice touch. Then you have these massive Velcro straps for the cables to go in. These are absolutely ginormous, which is awesome. So you put whatever you want in there and then fasten them, and they'll have a lot of grip. So even if they're bulking, you will be fine. Then you also have a little cable placement here. So for example, if you've installed this on your table, you might want to route some of the cables down, or maybe you want to route them up, and you have a choice for that. So while we're at the back, you can install 2 hard drives, or alternatively, you can install 2 SSDs onto these little caddies. And these caddies are designed to take the hard drives without having to install any screws. So it's completely toolless. You basically just put the drive in here, kind of flick it open, put the drive in, close it, and you can put it into the tray. So it's a simple yet effective solution. And then you can also install 2 more SSDs over here. So what you do, you basically push it open, and you can put the SSDs inside, and then just kind of push it right back in, and it secures down, nice and neat. Right, let's talk about the top. So for the top of the case, so we have a USB Type-C port, which supports up to 20 gigabits. We have 2 Type-A, which support up to 5 gigabits, which is a little bit of a downside because this is supposed to be for creators. We need high speed. This could have been 10 gigabit, that would have been much nicer. There's also a combo audio jack, which is a microphone and headphone. And then we've got the power button. So the power button by default is locked. You have a little lock here, which prevents this button from being pressed. When you're working on a project or an edit of sorts, you want to make sure that your cat or your children don't go on and accidentally turn off your PC, because that's the absolute worst. So yeah, you can literally power on your PC, press it, and it's locked down. Very nice. On the other side, we also have another button which is made for full fan speed or auto. So for example, when you're rendering, you might want to be like, okay, this is going to take a little while and I know my PC is overheating, so I'm just going to blast my fans. So just click it, do your work, and then when you're finished rendering or for whatever task you're working on, you can put it back to auto, and you can set your profile to be reasonably moderate in noise levels, which is a nice little touch as well. So I'd say so far this case has a few just nice to have features, especially for creators who don't want to lose their work when somebody accidentally does a bit of a mishap. The bit which stands out to me is the size. So with this particular size, as I said already, you can only fit a 240mm radiator inside, but it doesn't quite stop there. So for the CPU, if you went with an air cooler, you can only fit 160mm height of an air cooler. So that's a little bit limiting. Some of the really high-end units are slightly bigger than that. Also for the graphics card, you can only fit 315mm in length and 105mm in the vertical orientation. So it can't be particularly thick, so be mindful of that if you buy this case, or if you're planning to upgrade your graphics card to something very beefy. With that in mind, I'm going to proceed with building it now and provide you some more feedback in terms of build experience, any issues that I find within it, as well as its thermals and noise and performance. Let's get into it. Alright, with the build complete, let's go over how it actually was to put the system together, and more importantly, what stands out once the system is up and running. Starting with the build experience itself, it was relatively smooth, but there are some quirks worth pointing out. The motherboard tray includes a captive standout screw in the middle, which helps guide the board into place. That's actually a simple touch that makes a noticeable difference, especially when installing the board vertically. However, there is no GPU support bracket included, which feels a bit of a miss for a case in this price point, especially one that supports vertical GPU mounting. The side panel design is nice in terms of usability. It's toolless and locks securely, but once removed, you really notice how compact this case is. It's not built with bulky GPUs and massive coolers in mind. There's very little flex, which is great for build quality, but that compactness does come with trade-offs, especially in terms of component fit. The cable cutouts don't have any rubber grommets, but they're well sized and smooth enough that you won't need to worry about damaging the cables during the build. That said, the lack of grommets does take away a bit of that clean, polished look that you expect from something like a ProArt lineup. If you're routing the GPU cables through the lower cutout, I'd recommend planning ahead. Ideally, deal with those cables before fully installing the PSU. If you already got the power supply installed, you'll need to undo the 2 mounting screws, slide it back slightly, and then route the cables before locking it in place. It's doable, but it is tight. One of the high points of this case is cable management. The included Velcro straps are massive, like hilariously oversized in the best possible way, and they do their job really well, keeping everything in place. There are also a lot of tie-down points on the back, which will help you keep things neat. You can actually get a clean finish without much effort, which is always appreciated. Fan and radiator installation, this is mostly painless. The top bracket can be removed completely, which makes installing radiator or fans up there significantly easier. But remember, 240mm is your max here, not 280 or 360. This brings us back to the limitations of the form factor. One last aesthetic point I want to mention is about the wood accent. I really like the idea and I get what ASUS was going for, but I think they could have leaned into it a bit more. The current implementation is so subtle that it looks more like fake wood at first glance, especially under indoor lighting. If you're going to call it wood edition, then let the natural material shine through a bit more. With the system up and running, it was time to put the ProArt PA401 through its paces to see how it handles thermals and acoustics. Let's start with the 100% fan speed mode first. The CPU peaked at 54 degrees Celsius and the GPU reached 53 degrees. These temperatures are fairly typical for a case of this size with a more compact airflow layout. The larger front intake fans clearly help keep the system cool while staying quiet, but we're beginning to bump into the limitations when it comes to the high-end hardware. The fans on this case run much slower than the recently reviewed Langcool 217 from Lee, which also makes them run significantly quieter. Switching to the 40 dBA fan mode paints a slightly different picture. The CPU temperature increased to 55 degrees, while the GPU saw a 5-degree increase, landing at 58 degrees. This places PA401 solidly in the middle of the stack. The thick 160mm front fans are doing a lot of the heavy lifting, but it would be nice to see a few extra fans in there to push the hot air out. Compared to the Lee 217, which peaked at around 51 to 52 dBA, the ASUS lands in a nice sweet spot, especially at full fan speed, which makes sense given the inclusion of that fan selector switch. I'd actually make use of it, probably setting the quieter 40 dBA mode by default and toggling to full speed only when extra cooling is needed, like rendering files. In both scenarios, the case performed close to other compact mid-tower designs we've tested over the years, especially those with similar cooling constraints. It's not a thermal powerhouse, but it holds its own, particularly for users prioritizing clean and quiet desk setup over squeezing in some power-hungry components. Now to sum it all up. It's a case that delivers on its promises for the right type of user. If you're a creator, designer, or someone who values clean aesthetics and quieter workspace, this could be a great fit. The build quality is solid, cable management is genuinely impressive, and the features like the fan mode toggle and power button lock shows that ASUS has put thought into the real-world use cases. Of course, it's not for everyone. The limited clearance, modest radiator support, and the wood styling won't appeal to all tastes, but for those who appreciate the blend of form and function, it hits the mark really well. It's not a case that is designed to push limits. It's built to stay out of your way, and for many creators that's exactly the kind of reliability they're after. Thanks for watching. If you think this case might be what you need, check out the links below for more details. As always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.